Just 3 seasons ago, the Toronto Raptors made their first finals appearance ever and slayed the powerhouse Golden State Warriors in 5 games. But following the departure of Kawhi Leonard in the ensuing offseason, the dreams of a potential Raptors dynasty fell by the wayside. And fast forward 2 more seasons, and the Raptors are coming off of a disastrous 27-45 campaign in Tampa. And the only key remnants of a bygone championship team that are still hanging around today are Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet. And this season, Pascal has given the Raptors 17 points a night on career efficiency from behind the arc, and Freddie is giving the Raptors 19-7 on a nightly basis on his best efficiency from the field ever. And they're both fringe all-stars. They're going to keep the Raptors competitive and in contention for the playoffs as long as they're on the roster. But I don't know if they fit the Raptors' next title window, considering that Freddie and Pascal are both 27. So instead, today I want to focus on and talk about the young Raptors, the guys who are going to develop into stars and be the building blocks of this organization for years to come. But before we get into the young talent on the roster, I first want to give credit to the Raptors organization as a whole, because there's been arguably nobody better at taking overlooked talented guys and developing them into real stars. And as a testament to this fact, just take a look at what they developed Siakam and VanVleet into. Siakam was the 27th pick in 2016 out of New Mexico State, and was really just a raw athletic shot blocker and rim runner with a pretty preliminary postgame and jumper. Now, his game is still mostly based on his athleticism and strength, but his jumper is so much more improved, and he has such a better feel for the game. VanVleet went undrafted in the exact same 2016 draft, and while he produced at a pro level at Wichita State, VanVleet certainly didn't seem like a future 19-point-per-game scorer. He was always good at creating shots and shooting off the dribble, but now Freddie Buckets is so much better at everything in his game, but especially in orchestrating and engineering an offense. The Raptors organization is simply one of the best at taking guys and getting them to reach their peak, the best version of themselves on the floor, no matter their starting point. But enough about these two, let's get on to the young phenoms down this roster that the Raptors are developing for the future. We can start with the elder statesman of the young core, the old man of the group, the number 23 overall pick in the 2017 NBA draft, 24-year-old OG Anunoby. And we can start with his scoring skill set. He's giving Toronto 20 a night on 43, 36, 82 splits, but I first want to clear a misconception. Just because OG is shooting a lot and is averaging 20 a night does not mean he's all of a sudden a really good shot creator and the number 1 option on a really good team. Yes, he's averaging 18 field goals a night, the most on the Raptors this season, but he's nowhere close to a dominant one-on-one shot creator. He doesn't get a ton of separation creating off the dribble, and he hasn't been nearly efficient enough with his touches to call him a reliable perimeter shot creator. And don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that OG isn't a skilled shooter. There's a difference. He's a good shooter. He's shown flashes of marksmanship. This guy is capable of knocking down shots with dudes right up in his grill. He's a decently skilled shooter out of the post. But what I'm getting at is he is still best utilized strictly as a shooter off the catch. He's shooting 40% on turnaround fades, 32% on pull-up jumpers, 32% on step-backs, and 31% out of the mid-range, while he's shooting 42% off the catch. I just prefer OG's skill set more off-ball. With the ball in his hands, he doesn't really have a real bag. There's not a crazy change in pace. There's no crazy burst. Yes, he can blow by centers, but he doesn't blow by more agile defenders. And when he's dribbling, it seems like OG is just kind of figuring it out as he goes along. He's not manipulating defenders and not taking defenders to his spots. He's just kind of taking what they give him, so to speak. He relies on backing down and straight up overpowering dudes a lot. And he's not like a dynamic finisher. He's a league average finisher around the rim. He finishes hard, but he's not creative or dynamic like I said. He has no real mid-range game, floater, or in-between game, and he isn't explosive. And I don't mean to fully bag on OG, because I like him a lot. But the bottom line is, OG is not a guy that you want being the number 1 option on a championship team, and I don't really see that changing anytime soon. I don't see a crazy ceiling with OG that other people do. But I wholeheartedly believe that OG can be a really valuable 3-and-D third scoring option on a championship team. He's a great catch and shooter like I mentioned. He's got a strong base, and he is a long on-ball defender at 6'7", 232 pounds with a 7'2" wingspan. He jumps passing lanes. He has active hands. He's an active, engaged defender. He is a smart ball mover in this Toronto offense. He's a good roll man, and he just plays hard. And I was a big skeptic of his contract initially when I heard it was signed. 4 years, $72 million, and the deal kicks in this year. Honestly, I think it's a really good value deal for Toronto. It's $18 million for what will hopefully be in the future, again, a really solid 3-and-D wing with a lot of room to grow as a shot creator. But enough about OG, let's move on to his front court partner for the foreseeable future, the uber-talented Scotty Barnes. He's putting up 15, 8, and 3 on 49, 26, 72 splits. And we can start with what he does on defense. Scotty Barnes is a super versatile and impactful defender that I think can anchor an elite defensive group one day. He can genuinely defend 1 through 5. He is super mobile, super agile, and he's long enough to defend guards. He's strong, and he can knock and run guys off their spots. And again, he's super switchable. He is in the 83rd percentile of defensive pick-and-roll ball handlers this season. He's got a 7'3" wingspan, he's powerful, and he's actually started at the 5 in games this season against Portland and against Utah. The kid is a super active rebounder, and a lot of this work on this end comes down to engagement and effort. He is just a hustler. Now, offensively, his game is janky. Ball handling-wise, he can get pretty loose with his handle in the post and in general. There's no real crazy change in pace, and right now his bag is pretty limited. He's got a weirdly efficient mid-range pull-up game. He's shooting 55% on pull-up J's and 45% in the mid-range, while also not having the greatest touch. He's shooting 37% in the non-restricted paint. He's shooting below 30% on turnarounds, hooks, and floaters. Like, Scotty's bucket-getting game right now is just kind of weird. But I see the flashes of special ability with Scotty that make people think he's a future all-star and supreme offensive talent. He just gets to his spots with ease because of his long arms and how much ground he can cover in a single dribble. He doesn't hesitate to pull his jumper when he gets in the lane. He overpowers smaller guards and is long enough and fast enough to just get past less agile wings. And he's a supreme athlete and an intelligent player with an innate feel for the game. But I think there's a few things he needs to work on to truly maximize his skill set. First, he needs to get fully downhill more. He has a tendency to pump the brakes and look to kick it when he gets inside. And when the pass isn't there, this tendency leads to a lot of floaters, a lot of push shots, a lot of tough post turnarounds, and short baby hooks and touch shots in general. And again, he just doesn't really have the greatest touch right now. Getting downhill all the way to the rack would fully maximize his strength, power, and physical traits, as well as improve his value as a playmaker because of the attention he would command and his ability to collapse defenses. If we don't see that drastic stylistical shift to getting downhill more, and he continues with his current shot selection, then he's going to have to improve his touch in the paint. But I just think he needs to maximize his athletic and physical gifts as a player. And obviously, this is stating the obvious. He needs to keep expanding his range to behind the arc. He's at 26% this season from deep, and the three-point shot is just an invaluable weapon in today's NBA. But regardless of if he pops as a genuine offensive engine or not, Scotty will never be an offensive liability. He's an active and an aware off-ball mover and cutter. He is looking to help shooters by running DHOs. He's a hard screener. He's an unselfish, smart passer with solid playmaking chops. He's a great passer out of the short roll, and he's a smart roll man. And again, this kid's only 20 years old. He's got a lot of physical gifts. He's a super intelligent guy. He is a hard worker, and there is still a certain kind of ease that comes with operating inside the arc for Scotty. And with Toronto's track record of developing guys, the sky is the limit. Now on to Precious Achiuwa, the 22-year-old big man acquired in the Kyle Lowry sign and trade. He's given the Raptors 8 and 8 a night this season, and like Barnes and Anunoby, he breaks his bread at the defensive end of the floor. On the perimeter, he is a super versatile, modern 1 through 5 defending big man. He is a great wing defender. He is super agile, and he can move with perimeter guys. He is strong and stout. He doesn't let many guys blow by him, and he's got very active hands. This guy was a wing in college and in high school, and it shows with his perimeter defense. And on the interior, he is super solid as well. He's in the 96th percentile of defending the roll. He has a nearly 7'2" wingspan. This guy contests every shot. He is a competitive rebounder. And again, man, I hate stating this over and over again, but it just comes down to energy and effort on this end. He is a hustler, he is a grinder, and he drives winning on the defensive end. The Raptors have a defensive rating of 98.2 with Achiuwa on the floor, what would be the best in all of the NBA. Offensively, though, Achiuwa's game is pretty limited. Similar to Scotty, he has a janky little in-between floater, baby hook, short touch shot game, but mostly because he's not a super explosive leaper. And it's frustrating at times because he isn't super tall, he isn't super strong, he doesn't have that crazy bounce, and he can't just overpower guys. So he can't finish what would be easy dunks for other guys, whether that's off of the roll or he's just in open space in the paint, and I think that's reflected in some of his shooting stats. He's shooting 49% in the restricted area, 36% in the non-restricted paint, and 39% from the field. And so his physical limitations definitely put a hard cap on what his offensive game could be. But I think he does some other things pretty well on offense. He doesn't hesitate to attempt catch and shoot threes. He's a pretty poor shooter now. He's shooting 35% from deep, but I think that can get better with time. And playmaking-wise, I really like him. He's a surprisingly good ball handler with sneaky playmaking instincts. He's a good passer out of the short roll. He just lacks that explosive first step or change in pace to be a guy you run offense through, but he's definitely a competent ball handler. But even with these limitations offensively, I still think he could be a starting big man for a really good defensive team or one of the best six men in basketball. He's only in his second year in the league and has veteran defensive instincts. He really just needs to add a perimeter shot to his game to maximize his offensive skill set. But now we swing on to a guy who is definitely a weapon from deep, by far the most talented and prolific scorer of the young bunch. Acquired in the Norman Powell trade, it's 23-year-old Gary Trent Jr., and I think Trent is a perfect fit alongside this crew of defensive menaces. Because while I may have questions about the bucket-getting abilities of the aforementioned trio, I have zero questions about Gary Trent Jr. He is an absolute bucket, a flamethrower, a lights-out shooter. I mean, whatever you want to call him, he's a buck. He could fit into any offense because of his proficiency off the catch, that's for sure. He's hitting his catch and shoot attempts at a 40% clip this season, but he has gotten so much better with his ball handling, difficult shot making, and creation off the dribble in general. This guy is a maestro with the ball in his hands. He is a smooth, calculated operator in the lane. He uses head, pump, and ball fakes to get his defender off balance and to get into the lane. And then he's just trying to get his defender on his back hip or just manipulate the defense with his change of pace enough to open up space to get his jumper off. It's not flashy, it's not explosive, but it's damn sure effective. Gary Trent Jr. is 97th percentile in isolation this season, 5th in points per possession in all of the NBA in isolation. And that's why I think he fits with the future of this team so much. This young core needs a guy who can just fill it up and go get buckets, and that's all Gary Trent Jr. does. He is an exceptionally skilled and special shooter. He's shooting nearly 57% out of the mid-range. He's shooting 46% on pull-ups, 40% on step-backs, and while this is a small sample size, he is shooting nearly 88% on fadeaways and 57% on turnaround fades. But off the catch and in isolation aren't the only ways Trent can deal damage offensively. He's a dangerous weapon in the DHO game and on off-ball screens. He's in the 86th percentile in off-screen plays. That's 13th in the NBA in points per possession. And I don't really have an issue with any aspect of his offensive game. He's obviously never going to have crazy playmaking or interior value because he lacks an explosive burst, but he fits to fill it up and go get buckets role really well. If I'm nitpicking, maybe he gets a little too confident in his shot, but I'd rather have Trent always trigger happy instead of hesitant. And defensively, he's a workhorse too. He's engaged, he's got active hands on ball, and he hustles off ball. Again, stating the obvious, Trent is less impactful than the other young wings I've mentioned because he lacks the same physical and athletic traits, but he's solid enough and works hard on that end. Now, on to the most unproven young player in the rotation, but while he's unproven, he has got tremendous upside, and that's Delano Benton. He's a crafty 6'9" ball handler with a filthy bag. He's a rookie this season, and he fits the mold of other built-up young Raptors stars. He was drafted late, 46 in this year's draft. But there is a certain effortlessness with the ball in his hands with this kid. It is so easy for him to get into the lane and paint because of his long strides and change of pace. The long arms allow him to put up floaters and layups easily over smaller defenders, and he's strong enough and has good balance, which allows him to finish through contact on bigger defenders. This kid's a sneaky passer, solid playmaking vision, IQ, and instincts. But honestly, he's a little too willing of a passer right now. I wish he would be more assertive when he gets inside and look to take more floaters or even difficult layups, because he is a pretty dynamic finisher. I love watching this kid around the rim, but I'm not going to bag on him too much. He is super aware. He is always looking to share the ball, which I do think is promising for his career as a primary ball handler. He's also a nice asset defensively because of his 6'10" wingspan and long frame. He makes like hell on smaller ball handlers and guards. It's easy for him to move his feet and stay in front of them. It's also easier for him to poke at balls and knock them loose. And also because of his size, he can switch onto wings, which just adds to the defensive versatility of this young core. He also does a lot of the little things I like. He's an instinctive cutter. He's a good roll man. He always has smart positioning on the floor off ball. And he's an active rebounder. He crashes whenever he sees guys going up with shots. And honestly, his floor is just a well-rounded floor general off the bench. I think this kid is going to be a solid basketball player regardless. But I think his ceiling is a special all-star caliber two-way dynamo. I mean, this guy, again, we can talk about the elite guard size. It is just so easy for him to get past guys on ball and get across the court. He has got solid playmaking and defensive instincts that will progress into elite ones. The swing trait is obviously just his scoring skill set. That will make him an all-star talent. The jump shot in the in-between game. He's only 30% off the catch this season. He's shooting 40% on jumpers, and he's just going to have to become a more dominant shooter and scorer to maximize his scoring skill set and offensive arsenal as a whole. So that all being said about all these guys, with all of these tremendous young assets, what else do the Raptors need to become a real championship contender down the line? I think they just need an offensive engine. And my ideal guy is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's a silky smooth ball handler who keeps defenses honest. He can fill it up from the perimeter and in the mid-range by himself, but he can also feed other guys on the roster. I also consider guys like D'Angelo Russell, Malcolm Brogdon, and I don't mean Brogdon for sure because, again, he doesn't really fit that timetable. He's 28 years old, but I mean guys of that caliber. I genuinely believe they don't need a top 5 or top 10 player to be in genuine contention. I just think they need another young, high-level isolation and pick-and-roll perimeter scoring creator that fits their timetable. I would love for SGA to enter the fold and run this show in Toronto. But because there is such a premium on these guys in the league, I think they could also explore obtaining another high-impact defensive rim protector because I think Achiuwa's good, and he drives winning on that end. I think he could definitely start. But maybe you could explore another straight-up shot blocker and rim protector. Miles Turner, Jared Allen, and DeAndre Ayton with his contract coming up are all interesting options, but I would still much prefer acquiring a guy like SGA to drive the offense. Still, again, all these centers drive or heavily influence winning on the defensive end of the floor and would still be valuable young assets to add to a contending core. And that leads us to the next question. How do you get one of these guys? Well, I think you trade Pascal Siakam and picks and maybe another asset with him, a Goran Dragic, a Chris Boucher. But I think that's what you need to do. And some of you may be asking yourselves, why move Siakam over Van Vliet? Admittedly, Siakam is genuinely one of my least favorite players in basketball because of just how he plays the game. But I just think a guy like Van Vliet is more valuable to an offense and will be valuable, just valuable for longer in the scheme of things. An ideal contending starting 5 for me for the Raptors in the future would be Van Vliet and SGA with OG or Gary Trent Jr., with Scotty at the 4 and Achiuwa at the 5, with Delano Benton engineering and anchoring this bench unit. It's hypothetical, but damn, this would be a good team. A strong defensive core of 3 versatile wing defenders with solid offensive instincts, coupled with 2 high-end perimeter creators and an uber-talented two-way 6-man to help move things along.
So there you have it, guys. These are the young Raptors. They're feisty, they're hungry, they're competitive, and they're super talented. And I genuinely think they just need one more piece to claw back into contention. But regardless of if Toronto manages to open this title window, with a young core like this, they will be competitive and in the playoff hunt for years to come, or they'll have a hell of a lot of capital to move around and to build another roster in contention. But this is what I think of the young Raptors. Please, guys, let me know what you think of all of the young talent here in Toronto. And please let me know what assets you think they should go out to become a title contender.
If you have made it this far in the video, I thank you so much for watching. I had a blast researching and just watching film on all of these young guys. And if you're interested in more breakdowns, you can stick around on the channel here at Nerd Sesh. You can subscribe and look at all of the other video basketball breakdowns that we have on the channel. If you're interested in basketball podcasts, we do 3 a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. The Friday show is live. And a football show, which you can catch on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, but the other 2 are streamed right here on YouTube. So if you're interested in a live basketball podcast, you can check us out here on Mondays and Wednesdays. You can take a look at our social media content on Instagram at NerdSesh, on Twitter at nerd_sesh, and on TikTok at NerdSesh. And you can check out all of NerdSesh's content on nerdsesh.com. That includes not only the video content, but the written content that we make as well. And with that, again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon.